That's a very good team right now. And in theory, when Tatis gets back, it could get much better.
Tim Kurkjian covers baseball for ESPN. Tim, how you doing today?
I'm well, Buster. How's it going?
I'm doing okay. I must say, though, last night I got a bunch of texts from my son, the Braves fan, really concerned about that Ozzie Albies injury. And then I watched a replay of it right after he sent me that. I'm worried, Tim. I'm worried because the nature of foot injuries, sort of the weird way that happened, and also just knowing the impact that he has on that team, even when he's not necessarily having a great offensive season.
Yeah, he is a tremendous energy source on that team in every way. And I watched the replay. I didn't like looks of it. Also, being a little guy, I think I understand a little bit. You take the legs or the feet away from a little guy. Look, he's young. He's 25. He can come back from this. The Braves are going to be fine. But I always worry when a little guy who maybe not steals every base, but is really important on his feet because they're so important to a little guy. When he gets hurt like that, that always worries me. But the Braves won 12 games in a row. They have people who can fill in for him. They won the World Series without Ronald Acuna, another great energy source. But I think people will tell you on that team, Ozzie Albies is the greatest energy source they have, given just his infectious enthusiasm.
Yeah. Give me some observations you've had of him, through the years with that and how important that is over a 162 game season.
Well, that smile is unmistakable, and he flashes it all the time, and that's really, really important. Plus, all the work he does before games. I know all the infielders work with Ron Washington, but he seems to enjoy it more than anything. And when a teammate does something, especially when Acuna Jr. does something, I always watch for Ozzie Albies because he's the one first in the dugout to greet him. He's the one that's most excited about everything. And again, he's a really little guy, Buster. He's shorter than you are. And for him to be this good of a player and have this kind of production, especially last year, I think that adds to it.
Yeah. And I've told this story in the past about Ozzie and sort of his nature of his personality and how infectious it is. Before a Braves game, you watch that moment when, players are getting warmed up and they're running into the outfield, the position players from the foul line out towards center field. It's incredible to me how many players on other teams gravitate toward Ozzie. And it reminds me of Miguel Cabrera, who I started to see that happen with him in his 30s. Same thing with David Ortiz. But Ozzie's like 24, 25. And he has such energy. I remember watching him having a conversation with Ron Washington before a game in San Diego this year. And Eduardo Perez was standing next to me. He goes, you know what? If people didn't know better, if they didn't know Ozzie, they would think these two guys hate each other, because they're so demonstrative and they're fighting, but it's all in fun, and his personality manifesting.
Yeah, and don't forget, a couple years ago, they had a height off before a game between Ronald Torreyes and Ozzie Albies. They made them stand back to back, and Ozzie had everything to do with that. You think he's taller than I am, so they did a back to back during, before a game during batting practice. Ozzie won, and he was very proud of that, even though the whole thing was a big joke. That's just kind of the enthusiasm he shows every day.
All right, so I was on radio in Alabama a couple of weeks ago, and I declared the National League East race to be over, Tim. I said, no, it's over. The Braves will never catch the Mets. How stupid was I?
Standard stupid for you, Buster. You love to jump early on these things, and that's why we love you. But 12 in a row for the Braves. So that ties the 2018 Astros for the longest winning streak by a defending World Series champion. And the way they're doing it is really impressive. The way they pitched, of course, Max Fried and Kyle Wright's been great. And the way they score runs, hit the ball out of the ballpark. I still really like the Mets team. Don't get me wrong. This is nothing against the Mets. This is that the Braves have hit their stride again. And after last year, we should have never questioned when Atlanta can get it going. Brian Snitker held a team meeting. All of a sudden, the Braves win 12 games in a row. Not a coincidence.
Yeah, and the Mets know that they've got Jacob deGrom probably coming back. sometime around the All-Star break. You have Max Scherzer coming back before then. When I asked Buck Showalter about the surging Phillies and the surging Braves, he looked at me like I was a complete idiot, Tim. Like, it's way too early to be having those discussions. But it is interesting watching the Braves put it together. Adam Duvall has started to hit like crazy. And Dansby Swanson, I don't think he's going to win the National League MVP, but you know what? He's going to be in the top 10 on the ballot, which I never would have guessed after his slow start.
Right. Remember, Buster, that slow start. He struck out 4 times on opening night. He struck out, I think, I'm being close on this, his first 14 games of the season. And he was leading the league in strikeouts after about 3 weeks of the season. And he has really turned it around. He's hitting close to 300. He's doing it with power. He's a great defensive shortstop. That guy's a really good player. He gets better every year.
So we have a changing of leadership in the National League West last night. The San Diego Padres move into a virtual tie with the Los Angeles Dodgers. And I got to say, Tim, if you told me at the end of the year that the Padres won this division, it wouldn't be a shock. They've done all this work this year. It's 38-24 so far this season without the guy who theoretically is one of their 1 or 2 best players, Fernando Tatis Jr., and he might be joining their lineup very soon. And the Dodgers, there's a weariness about that team, Tim. And I saw it, I got to say, in those years that I covered the Yankees, I saw that, year after year after year with the high expectations on the team, pushing that rock back up the hill every year, I think began to wear on the players. And then you have literal wearing on the players. Walker Buehler going down with an injury the other day, a forearm issue. They've made it clear he's not going to be back for a long time. Justin Turner getting older. Some of the other guys are struggling in the lineup. Dave Roberts talking on Monday about, hey, we need to start doing some things better. We need to start playing better baseball.
Yeah, Buster, I did their game Friday night and Saturday in San Francisco. And granted, they ran into a really good Giants bullpen on Saturday, but they left 14 guys on base. They had the bases loaded 4 times in that game and just couldn't get people home. And as far as the weariness goes, Buster, look, I'm with you. I think the Dodgers will be a really, really good team when October comes, and they'll be playing in October. That's obvious. However, I was told that Julio Urias is a little sore and a little tired from last year. Buster, he pitched more than twice as many innings last year as any other season in his career. And even though his numbers are good, he's given up 12 home runs and he's a little tired, I'm told. I was told the same thing about Walker Buehler, that he's just not the same pitcher. And that was before he got hurt. And he's going to miss 2 months, Buster, maybe longer than that. If he's not picking up a ball for 6 to 8 weeks, he's going to be out for a long time. And granted, they have Tony Gonsolin, they have pitching in the minor leagues. But, the Padres are really good right now. And the Giants, despite not being as good, they're a pain in the neck too. And I think the Dodgers have their hands full. But Dave Roberts is right. They have to play better. As great as their offense is, they are a spotty offensive team here and there where you can pitch to that team, which I didn't think a lot of people thought you could.
And you really feel like Bob Melvin's made a huge difference with the Padres, yes?
Yes. I was told, last year, somebody's got to come in and clean up some things here. And Bob Melvin's really good at that. He goes right in and sees what's wrong and he fixes it. But look at their team right now with the way they have pitched Joe Musgrove and others, the way Jake Cronenworth has played, and of course, Manny Machado. That's a very good team right now. And in theory, when Tatis gets back, it could get much better.
I'm really curious about Tatis Jr. coming back and how exactly that all plays out, especially the question of whether or not he plays shortstop or center field. What do you think?
Well, I think he's going to play shortstop, but it'll be interesting to see what happens because he's been the star of the team since the minute he got there, even though Manny Machado's been a better player at times and all that, but he was the marquee guy. But remember, Buster, they had the best record in baseball after 50 games and then finished under 500 last year with Tatis in the middle of all that. Now he's going to come back, whenever it is, maybe to a first-place team. Maybe he's going to look around and say, my teammates are really, really good. Maybe I should, follow the lead of them this time instead of maybe the other way around. I would play him at shortstop, but I think he's so athletic. He could play center field, stay healthier, but I think his best shot is at shortstop.
Yeah, and I think my question at shortstop is, and I agree with you, he'll come back and he'll be the shortstop. But I do think that the standards for performance and expectation have been raised there. So if he were to come back and make a bunch of errors early, I'd be curious to see what the reaction would be from Bob Melvin.
Yeah, I mean, I've had people in the organization tell me he's a center fielder long term. That was last year. I was surprised to hear it that early, but you're right. Bob Melvin has tightened things up there in every way. And one of them is the defense. And Tatis Jr. is a spectacular defensive player. And yet every once in a while will kick a ground ball. That is going to be unacceptable this time.
So I'm going to ask you in a bit about the Tony LaRussa situation, about the Orioles ownership. But before that, I want to ask you about some of the major awards that are up for grabs. American League Cy Young Award is, to me, potentially a fascinating race because it might involve two teammates, Kevin Gausman and Alek Manoah, the Toronto Blue Jays. Right now, Tim, if you look at Fangraph's version of pitching WAR, Kevin Gausman is far and away the front runner, 3.0 WAR to this point, Manoah at 1.9. Tim, I looked at this morning, though, Manoah's ERA is nearly a run better than Kevin Gausman. It's clear that Gausman's incredibly low home run rate is the reason why he's got that 3.0 WAR. I think right now Manoah might win that award. What about you?
Yeah, I would vote for him. By the way, War Buster is confusing to me still because there are other sites that have a different WAR for each player. Yeah, yep. To me, if WAR is going to work, then it has to be the exact same formula as everyone else's. So it's confusing. But having said that, I would take Manoah. He's 8-1, and I still pay attention to wins and losses. He leads the league in ERA. He's pitched 75 innings. He's done it for a very good team. I find 3-4 guys that you could put in this conversation, but I would take the big right-hander for the Blue Jays.
And I want to talk a little bit about Manoah because I just love to watch him pitch. He's such an unusual starting pitcher. I think he's the closest thing that I've seen to a position player as a starting pitcher that I've seen in the time I've covered baseball. And this is what I mean by that. There's like a separation in clubhouses between the position players and the starting pitchers. Usually they have the starting pitchers, relief pitchers on one side of the clubhouse. They have the position players on the other. Pitchers are kind of on their own thing, right? They have their own regimen. They have their own workout routine. They're kind of off doing their own thing. Even during the course of games that they pitch, they'll come back into the dugout. They're in one corner and they're not to be talked to. No one's allowed to go in their area. Everyone leaves them alone because they're on their starting pitcher day, the day that they're making their start. With Manoah, all those lines are blurred during the course of his game. I can't remember seeing a guy like that, Tim.
Yeah, it's weird. He wears a position player's number. First off, really throws you off. He weighs 280 pounds and he's wearing number 6. That doesn't look right. He looks like your third catcher or your second DH, and he's out there firing. So, but maybe that's part of it. Maybe people look at him and he doesn't even really look like a pitcher until that stuff comes in, and then everyone goes, whoa, we're dealing with something really good here.
Yeah, I like watching him interact with teammates in the dugout during his starts. He's just a normal guy. He's not, he's not someone who has this aura about him like a starting pitcher. He's just another normal player in the dugout having a great time. National League MVP, I think Pete Alonso's got to be in that conversation. Paul Goldschmidt's got to be in that conversation. Who you got?
Well, Manny Machado's in that conversation too, but I'm going to take Goldschmidt. He has, of course, solidified that infield defense. He is a pro's pro in every way, player of the month in May. Hit over 400 with 10 homers in May. The only Cardinals ever to do that in any month are Stan Musial and Rogers Hornsby. Leads the league in OPS for a team that's in first place. So I could easily go to Alonso. I could easily go to Manny Machado, who has been tremendous for the Padres. But I'll go with Goldschmidt because I just know when you're around that team, they just look at him and they kind of follow his lead because he's just the most reliable guy in the world. Every day is the same.
I don't think there's any doubt that Aaron Judge is the front runner to be the American League MVP because he's on a pace, Tim, to hit over 60 homers, be the first guy to hit that benchmark in over 20 years. But I do want people to pay attention to what Jose Ramirez is doing for the Guardians. Ridiculous. Like in any other year where you didn't have a player like Judge doing what he's doing, Jose Ramirez right now would be the runaway front runner to be the American League MVP. Do you agree with me?
I wouldn't say runaway, but I would say he's right there. But look, Buster, I'm 65 and I still put value in, is your team ahead? Is your team in first place? Are you winning? So Aaron Judge has a 1.077 OPS for a team that is 44-16, and he's leading the league in home runs. He's the MVP of the league. Jose Ramirez has had a ridiculous year, and the Guardians wouldn't be anywhere without him. But when you are the best player on the best team, it almost guarantees that you're the MVP. That's where Aaron Judge is.
So these numbers are impossible for Jose Ramirez. 37 extra base hits, including 16 homers, 33 walks, and just 17 strikeouts. Impossible in 2022.
Right. Well, the strikeout totals are the ones that jump out at you. I mean, when a guy has more strikeouts, more walks and strikeouts, it's absurd these days. When you have almost as many homers as strikeouts, that's DiMaggio, Ted Kluszewski-esque. Yogi Berra. We just don't see that stuff anymore. That's the impressive part about Ramirez. He's the best third baseman in the game right now, and he's been tremendous.
So on Friday's podcast, we talked with Paul Lambikides about some of the underlying numbers behind Tony LaRussa's decision to walk Trey Turner intentionally on a 1-2 count. And we talked about, Max Muncy.
Buster, did we do the NL side yet? Sorry to interrupt.
No, but I wasn't going to.
Oh, it was too easy. Is that right?
I didn't find it as compelling.
Okay, very good.
Is that okay?
Sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
Okay. Do you want to get into it? I can just tee up.
Nope. I thought you'd forgotten, which is very unusual. So it didn't happen.
Go. Thank you. On Friday's podcast, we talked with Paul Lambikides about that decision that Tony LaRussa made last week, intentionally walking Trey Turner after the count got to 1-2 to pitch to Max Muncy. Muncy hits the home run. A lot of folks in social media were ripping Tony LaRussa, saying it's totally ridiculous. Hembo presented the numbers that show that the underlying statistics, back up to some degree what LaRussa did. I think Hembo and I both fell in the same place. We wouldn't have intentionally walked Trey Turner, but we also said it's not like it was some crazy decision. Well, LaRussa over the weekend continues to get criticism for that choice. This was LaRussa on Friday going back over that Trey Turner decision.
Can you explain the thought process on the intentional walk?
So let me ask you a question. Is there some question about whether that was a good move or not?
I guess if 1-2 is the question at the count.
Do you know what he hits against left-hand pitching with 1-0-1 or 2 strikes? Do you know what he hits? Do you know what Muncy hits with 2 strikes against left-hand pitcher? Is that really a question? Because it was 1 and 2? Turner was a strike left against a left-hander is not something you can avoid if you can. And we had an open base, and Muncy happened to be the guy behind him, and that's a better matchup. Here again, somebody disagrees. That's the beauty of this game. Welcome to it. But that wasn't a tough call.
So that was sound from right after Thursday's game. On Friday, LaRussa basically said, I don't have any second, I'm not second guessing myself a day later. He was booed by White Sox fans over the weekend. Tony, they were chanting, or Tim, they were chanting for him to be fired. I got asked the question by some editors, some radio producers. Look, is Tony LaRussa in trouble? Tim, what do you think?
I don't think he's in trouble. And we had Jesse Rogers on Baseball Tonight on Sunday. He's our Chicago reporter, and he says he's not going to get fired, and I don't think he should be fired. I would not have walked Trey Turner with a 1-2 count, but it was not the most egregious thing in the world. Trey Turner is a great hitter, and I looked up those numbers of Trey Turner against left-handers, and yeah, he was like 5 for 15 with a 2-strike count against lefties this year. We get it. And Max Muncy has struggled all year, lefty on lefty. I don't think it was the worst thing I've ever seen. Buster, I covered a game in Baltimore in '88 where Frank Robinson took Jay Tibbs out of the game, the pitcher, with an 0-2 count. He took him out of the game with an 0-2 count because Jose Canseco had hit 2 line drives down the left field line, foul, as hard as you can hit a ball. And Frank said, that's enough. I'm not going to watch him straighten one of those out and hit it 600 feet. So I've seen crazier things than that. I wouldn't have done it. And you open yourself up to criticism when you do that, especially in today's Twitter world where everyone is an expert.
We talked about it on Sunday Night Baseball, and I said, look, it comes down to this. Will Jerry Reinsdorf fire Tony LaRussa? And Jerry Reinsdorf, to me, is one of the most loyal owners in sports, maybe to a fault in some years, in some cases. But he felt bad about having Tony LaRussa fired 4 decades ago. The idea that he would fire him in midseason the year after they won the American League Central, there's no way that Jerry's doing that. And social media certainly has a collective opinion. White Sox fans have an opinion. The front office of White Sox might have an opinion. No opinion matters, Tim, other than Jerry Reinsdorf, yes?
Yes, you're absolutely right. Jerry Reinsdorf calls it the biggest mistake of his baseball career was firing Tony LaRussa the first time. He's not going to do it the second time, especially given the injuries and everything else that's going on with that team. Look, I'm not going to defend Tony to the hilt here, but I'm telling you, Buck Showalter told me he watched a 3-game series very closely, Yankees and White Sox last year. And he said, Tony hasn't missed a step when it comes to the strategy of the game. Now, you can argue with that, but Buck Showalter volunteered that to me. So I'm going to say, get the White Sox healthy, get them going in the right direction, then we'll see. But I don't see him being in danger now.
All right, we got 2 minutes, 2 topics left. I want to ask you about the Orioles ownership situation. Lou Angelos filed lawsuit against John Angelos. John Angelos put out a statement on Monday saying that he'll never move the Orioles. I feel like that this legal fight between the two brothers was unbelievably predictable. And you hope that they can settle it. But my bigger concern, Tim, is for the franchise and in the immediate future, feeling like, boy, they've done all this tanking in recent years. The team, has a good farm system. They're have an opportunity to grow. And what I'm concerned about for the fan base is that this is going to restrict spending in the immediate future. What's your concerns about this?
Yeah, and I could see this scenario coming up. I've had people warning me about this for a couple of years, and then it happened. And yes, I'm worried about the franchise. It's such a rich history of the Orioles. And I went to a game there the other night and there weren't too many people there. And those that were there weren't very enthusiastic. And I worried about their rebuild. Is this working? And is this going to hold back the rebuild even more?
And I want to talk to you a little bit about Mike Trout, who was on the microphone for us the other day. Tim, about 5 hours before the game, I was talking with Trout, and thanked him for wearing the microphone. He serves at DH, and he was kind of lamenting the fact that he wasn't going to be in center field. And then he started talking about how much he loves it and how much he loves the idea that fans are getting some insight into what players are doing during the course of the game. And he said, you know what, in 5 years, there'll be a player wearing the microphone in every broadcast. And, I told him, look, early in the year, Bryce Harper was the DH. He wore the microphone for a lot of the game and had a lot of fun with it. And that's exactly what Mike Trout did, Tim. He brought up that, the fantasy football league, the famous fantasy football league that led to the slap by Tommy Pham of Jock Peterson. He talked about how he's going to move on from commissioner. He talked about his son Beckham. He talked about last week, Joe Madden being let go. I mean, he completely opened up and had a blast with it.
Right. And it was so encouraging to see that. And I'm really not surprised. He is a really fun-loving guy who's got a great personality, whether you're talking about Eagles football or the weather or all sorts of things. He is a really funny guy when he wants to be. And people just look at, years ago, he said something to the effect of, look, just playing the game is all I really care about. But now I think he's recognizing that as the best player in the game and the face of the game to some degree, he can add even more to the game. When people see Mike Trout that animated doing anything, I think it's really good for him, for his team, and mostly for the game.
All right, Tim, thanks for doing this. Great to talk with you as always.
Okay, Buster. See you guys.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.